The first sound I heard that morning was metal hitting metal. Clang. Then another. Clang. I dropped my coffee and ran to the front porch. 3 men in bright safety vests were standing beside my old ranch fence. Sparks flew as a powered cutter sliced through the heavy steel wire my grandfather had built over 40 years ago. "Hey," I shouted. "What do you think you're doing?" One of them barely looked at me. "We have orders." "Orders from who?" Before he could answer, a white SUV rolled across the dirt road, throwing dust everywhere. Out stepped a woman wearing expensive sunglasses and a bright blue blazer. She walked like she owned every acre around her. She smiled. "You must be Mr. Carter." "I am? Why are your workers cutting my fence?" She folded her arms. "Because this ugly fence blocks the new community trail. The HOA voted last week. It has to come down." I stared at her for a second. Then I laughed. "You've got the wrong property." Her smile disappeared. "No, I don't. You really do." She pulled out a folder and waved several papers in front of my face. "We've already approved everything. If you interfere, I'll have you arrested for obstructing a legal project." The workers started cutting again. Another section of my fence crashed onto the ground. That fence wasn't just steel. It kept nearly 200 cattle from reaching the highway. I grabbed my phone and started recording. "You've got exactly 1 chance," I said calmly. "Tell your people to stop." She stepped closer until we were almost face to face. "You don't give orders here?" One worker whispered. "Ma'am, maybe we should double-check the survey markers." She shot him an angry look. I said, "Keep cutting." He lowered his head and obeyed. Within seconds, several frightened cattle noticed the opening. One young bull pushed through the broken fence and started moving toward the county road. A pickup driver slammed on his brakes only a few hundred feet away. Tires screamed. Dust filled the air. The woman didn't even turn around. Instead, she pointed at me. "This is exactly why people like you shouldn't own land." I looked straight into my camera. Everyone heard that. She smirked. "Good, make sure you record this too." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff. By the time he gets here, you'll be in handcuffs." I nodded without saying another word. She thought the badge would save her. What she didn't know, the sheriff already knew this ranch better than she ever could. And the biggest mistake wasn't cutting my fence. It was believing this land belonged to her, HOA. The sheriff's cruiser rolled onto the ranch 10 minutes later. Dust followed behind him as he stopped beside the broken fence. Karen crossed her arms with a proud smile before he even stepped out. "There he is," she said loudly. "Sheriff, this man is interfering with an approved HOA project. He threatened my workers and refuses to follow community rules." The sheriff looked at me for only a second. Then he looked at the fence. Then at the workers. "Nobody moves," he said calmly. Karen smiled even wider. "I knew you'd handle this." The sheriff ignored her. He walked to the broken fence, picked up one of the cut steel wires and asked, "Who ordered this fence to be cut?" "I did," Karen answered confidently. "It's HOA property now." The sheriff slowly turned toward her. "Are you absolutely sure about that?" She handed him her folder. "Our attorney approved everything." He flipped through the papers without saying a word. Then he asked one simple question. "Where did you get this map?" "Our survey company." He nodded. "Interesting." He walked back to his patrol truck and pulled out another folder. Inside were official county maps, property records, and survey documents. He placed both maps on the hood of his cruiser. "Everyone come over here." The workers gathered around. Karen still looked confident. The sheriff pointed to the county survey. "This HOA." His finger stopped nearly half a mile away from my ranch. He looked directly at Karen. "This ranch has never been part of your HOA." Silence. One worker slowly took off his hard hat. Karen laughed nervously. "That's impossible." The sheriff shook his head. "No. What's impossible is how your survey company ignored every county marker." She grabbed her phone. "I'll call my lawyer." "Go ahead," the sheriff replied. "He'll need to explain these fake property boundaries." One worker quietly admitted, "Ma'am, I told you this morning the markers didn't match." She glared at him. You were supposed to follow orders. The sheriff heard every word. So you knew there was a problem? Nobody answered. Just then, another county truck arrived. It wasn't another deputy. It was the county surveyor. He carried GPS equipment and spent 20 minutes checking every marker. When he finished, he smiled at me. Mr. Carter, your fence is exactly where it has legally been for decades. Karen's face turned pale. But, the developer said, the developer doesn't own this land, the surveyor interrupted. The sheriff closed his notebook. Now we have another problem. He looked toward the damaged fence. Destruction of private property. He looked at the open pasture. Livestock put at risk. He pointed toward the road. And possible public endangerment. Karen finally realized this wasn't going her way. I was only trying to improve the neighborhood, the sheriff answered quietly. Improving a neighborhood doesn't give anyone permission to destroy someone else's property. Just then, one of my security cameras caught everyone's attention. I had installed several around the ranch months earlier because of cattle theft. The sheriff watched the footage inside my barn office. The video showed everything. Karen arriving. The worker warning her about the survey markers. Her saying, I don't care. Cut it anyway. Nobody said a word after the video ended. The sheriff looked at her. That recording just changed this case. She tried one last time. He edited it? I smiled. There are 6 cameras, all showing the same thing. The workers immediately admitted they had followed her direct orders. The sheriff placed Karen in handcuffs. You are under arrest for criminal trespass, destruction of private property, and filing a false report. She couldn't believe it. As she was placed in the patrol car, several neighbors, who had followed the construction, trucks quietly watched from the road. One older man shook his head. We told her this ranch wasn't part of the HOA. Another neighbor replied, she never listened to anyone. The story spread across the county within hours. The HOA board held an emergency meeting that same week. Several board members resigned after learning they had approved work without checking county records. The SOA's insurance refused to protect Karen because she had acted outside her legal authority. She ended up paying for every foot of damaged fencing, the emergency cattle recovery, legal costs, and additional penalties ordered by the court. Months later, a brand new steel fence stood stronger than before. The county even installed official boundary signs so nobody could ever claim confusion again. One afternoon, the sheriff stopped by to check on the ranch. He smiled at the new fence. You know, people think this story is about a fence. I smiled back. It never was, he nodded. It was about respecting property. And knowing that power means nothing when the law says you're wrong. I looked across the ranch where my cattle grazed peacefully behind the rebuilt fence. Some people think the loudest voice wins, but on that ranch, the property records, the cameras, and the truth spoke much louder.